Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altishin, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today we have attorney Andy Kralios to go through the 5 things you should not do if you're injured in a car accident. Andy, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Oh, thanks for coming. You are the perfect person for this. Yeah, well, you've got a ton of experience in these kinds of cases, and you probably see all of these mistakes all of the time. So let's kind of start in with a kind of a dumb question, but I always ask dumb questions, and that is, you know, are they avoidable? The first thing is, are these, between before getting into them, are they avoidable mistakes? And you know, why do you really want to avoid making mistakes like these?
So there's a process that insurance companies look for. Um, so that is to say, a pattern for cases, and not all cases fit a pattern. So that can be very detrimental to clients. But in order to stay within a pattern, to not set off red flags for the insurance company, it's important to avoid these mistakes, which will cause auto insurer to immediately devalue your case and discount your pain and suffering.
Yeah. So let's go to mistake number one, neglecting to seek immediate medical care. It seems like an obvious one.
So that is a problem when you have a gap in care. The insurance companies make a big deal out of that. They always point to that and they try to build their case on it if you end up going to a trial. The reason it's important is uh, because you should go get checked out, first of all, anytime you're in a car crash, because there are unseen injuries. The insurance company calls them soft tissue injuries. That's not a medical term. Doctors don't use that term. That's an insurance industry term. But what it means is you didn't get a fracture, but you might have a severe sprain. You might have a herniated disc. There's a lot of things that you're not going to be able to really tell with your body unless you get checked out. Um, so one of the problems that my clients run into is a lot of times they'll be at the scene of the collision and they're full of adrenaline. It was scary, and they don't feel particularly bad at the scene. They're full of adrenaline, and so when responding law enforcement shows up and says, "Do you want us to get an ambulance for you?" A lot of people say, "No, I feel okay." And then the next morning they feel terrible after they've slept on, um, again, those soft tissue injuries, and they'll feel very stiff and achy in new ways that they haven't felt before. And so even if you go the next day, even if you go the next day, that's more helpful than just not going
Yeah.
or waiting 2 weeks. And then a lot of times, what's unfortunate is clients they won't be able to go because they have to work, um, or they feel like they don't have a way to pay for it. They don't have the insurance. And then there's different ways to pay for it, and that's really kind of what my whole role is at least in part, is getting those medical bills paid. So, bottom line, get checked out. If you're offered an ambulance ride, if you're in doubt, you should probably take it. Although, what I can recommend sometimes is if you go to an urgent care facility, you sometimes can get seen more quickly. Emergency rooms are notorious for their wait times. It's also the most expensive care money can buy when you go to the
Yep.
ER.
Yep.
So, you know, just make an appointment, walk into an urgent care, call your primary care physician, do whatever you have to do to get checked out as soon as possible after the collision.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it seems like, you see it in the movies. Somebody doesn't, go to their doctor right away. And then the insurance company comes in and says things like, "Oh, that wasn't from the accident. That was from a week later when you went fishing or you went to the disco or something."
Yeah, that's true as well, Steve. Is the insurance company, they will they'll try to blame your injury on anything under the sun other than what they have to pay for.
Yeah.
So if you have a intervening um, anything physical, if you play a sport or like you said, you went fishing, they'll try to blame it on something intervening, so that, like you said, you were fine following the collision. This happened from this other episode where you bumped your head in the bathroom. And the other thing that they'll do is they'll try to blame it on something pre-existing,
Yeah.
instead of calling it uh, a traumatic injury, meaning something that happens all at once. They'll say, no, this is based on something degenerative, meaning you've had these back problems for a while. And so it's very important for us to come in and be careful about specifying um, and uh, explaining with particularity what the injuries are. Because, yeah, if a client has a old low back injury or a deteriorating injury in their low back, that's one thing. But that doesn't mean that that affects a new pain in their upper back or in their shoulders or neck. So to get those differentiated is really critical, and we do rely on the medical professionals to help us do that.
Yeah. The the second thing not to do, I've listed as talking with the insurance company uh, without any preparation, and especially looking at the other side's insurance company. I'm sure they want to talk to you before you get a time to talk to your lawyer.
That's absolutely right. And a lot of people have they misconceive, or they misperceive that if an insurance company calls them, that they have to talk to them right then and there. And that's not correct. And the person calling you will say things like, well, I need this information now, or we won't be able to pay your damages on your car. I mean, they'll say all kinds of things that are basically pressure sales tactics, trying to instill a false sense of urgency that you need to have this conversation now or you're going to be out of luck. And, I've heard some whoppers as far as uh, the fibs that they tell. One of my favorites is, well, you can talk to an attorney, but they're not allowed to get you any more than what I'm offering you on this phone call. So that's kind of an extreme example, but just even telling the story. If the other driver's insurance calls you up, they're trying to get your story so that they can hold it to you later. And I've heard recordings of these and read transcripts of it where person calling, they'll try to pin you into an answer. They'll ask you a leading question, say, so it sounds like you didn't hit the sounds like the car didn't hit you very hard, huh? Things like that. So you don't have to talk to them immediately. You don't even have to talk to your own insurance company immediately. Although that's a slightly milder example because as their customer, they owe you a little bit of a different duty to handle your claim. The other driver's insurance doesn't owe you anything. So be
Right.
especially careful when you hear this is State Farm representing the other. I didn't mean to single out State Farm. It's all of them, all state farmers, Progressive. They'll call you up and just try to pin you down on answers before you even aware what your rights are, before you even know what your injuries are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like you get hurt and you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you some medication and you put on pain medication or something. And that's not a great time to talk to anyone, it seems like, because you can get really confused with a lot of that medication.
True, true. If you go to an ER and they put you on a muscle relaxer or a painkiller, that's not a great time to be having a phone call, probably with anyone, but least of all an insurance company.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Number three we have was, and it's kind of related to number one, is neglecting to seek proper follow-up care. Because all injuries are different and they manifest themselves differently.
That's correct. A lot of times, clients and other injured folks they'll go to an initial visit and um, I think there's this expectation just among the public that when you go see a doctor, they cure you.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Sometimes most of the time, it seems like they take a wait and see approach. They say, here's some medicine to make you feel better. If it doesn't resolve, call us again. So follow the instruction. If it doesn't resolve, call them again, make a follow-up appointment. If it's an emergency room visit, you don't have to return to the emergency room. Again, you could go to an urgent care clinic. Those are very useful for people injured in accidents. Call your primary care physician. That can be a little troublesome because sometimes they'll say, well, we can't see you for 3-4 weeks. So the urgent care visit is a good way to report in with a medical professional who can describe the injury in a more precise manner as far as location and severity. My clients tend to just say, it hurts, and it's sometimes difficult when you're not a medical professional to extract the information of how does it hurt, where does it
Yeah.
hurt, how often does it hurt, does it hurt all the time, is it intermittent? And these are things that in a follow-up appointment you should go and explain to the medical professional who's seeing you so that they can possibly come up with a new recommendation. They might say, well, it's been a week since your collision and you're telling me the pain keeps getting worse and worse. So they took an x-ray of you at the ER that we didn't find any fractures, but let's see what else is going on. And they might order an MRI, and the MRI reveals a whole bunch of information that an x-ray won't.
Yeah.
And plus there's just other helpful directions that medical professionals can help you go in general. And you want to make sure you follow their advice. A lot of my clients will go see a chiropractor that they saw on television, which that's a different kind of care.
Yeah.
And it can be helpful. A lot of people experience a lot of pain relief with chiropractors, but that's a different kind of medicine. They don't normally order an MRI in my experience. So it's hard to get to the bottom of what has actually been hurt inside your body.
Yeah. Well, it seems like everything you've talked about is just good for your health. I mean, it's an accident is in a PI case is two things, it seems to me. It is one, making yourself well, and then two, getting compensation. And if you don't follow up, can insurance companies come back and say, well, hold it, time it out. It would have only been, you know, $10,000 if you would have just followed up. But now you're wanting 100,000 because you were too negligent to go, help yourself. Does that kind of happen?
Yeah, that's true. One of the most important things, if not probably the most important thing, is getting better, getting back as close as possible to where you were before the collision. And money can only do so much. Sometimes it doesn't really do anything. If you have a permanent injury, the money is not going to undo the collision and undo your injury. So it's really important to follow the advice of medical professionals and not really try to avoid taking your care into your own hands. If you want to, say, for example, go do some alternative medicine like acupuncture, which a lot of insurances won't cover, mention it to your doctor. Sometimes, depending on your doctor, they will incorporate that alternative medicine and not just the traditional Western medicine. But also, it's critical to show the insurance company that this was directed by a medical professional. This
Yep.
wasn't something that I just guessed at and I walked into, whatever it is, an acupressure clinic because I wanted to heal myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So number four, and this is, you know, attorneys kind of, shake their heads sometimes and go, why are you doing this? But again, insurance companies seem like reasonable people to most folks. So number four is waiting for the insurance company to do the right thing.
Right. So that's do that at your peril. My experience is that the first person who calls you from the auto insurer is trained in a different way than some of the other adjusters. And a lot of times what they'll do is if you come hire us and we send out a letter saying we represent this client, a lot of times they'll switch your file over to a completely different adjuster, who, in my experience, is more professional. They're people, and yeah, they do want to do the right thing. But at the bottom line is they have a directive from their employer to save money on every claim. And that's just the model of the insurance business, is that deny any claim you can, because the money is only supposed to flow in one direction. Now, Steve, I try not to be ideological about this. I used to do insurance defense. I've worked for insurers, and they're not sitting there, rubbing their hands together trying to be evil. They're cutting costs, but the fact that they're doing it to you,
Yeah.
or to our clients, they're not going to do the right thing by you. And waiting and seeing is, in Washington, there are regulations that require them to handle your claim in a fairly quick manner. So you will get a phone call, but they're not going to do what's right for you. They're not going to sit there and say, look, we want to make you whole again. What they want to do is pay you the smallest amount of money possible, up to and including $0 if there's a basis to do it, and close their file.
Yeah.
And if they can get you to sign a release, all the better for them, because then you can't reopen the claim later.
That totally leads into the last one, number five, which I think a lot of people fall into, especially if they don't have an attorney, which is taking the quick cash, the lowball offer to get their money now.
Yes, that happens a lot. It usually happens in conjunction with the vehicle. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the injured person is full of adrenaline at the scene of the collision. Sometimes they'll start getting calls the same day, depending on if it was morning rush hour or what time of day it was, before the stiffness and the pain usually starts manifesting itself. And so they're worried about the car, especially if it's a new car. That's where their mind is. Oh man, I just bought that car 2 months ago and now it's totaled. And so insurance companies, in conjunction with offering you the value of your vehicle, they're basically buying your wreck. They will try to sew in something for, they'll say this is for your pain and suffering, and they'll offer things like $500, which to them is fine. They'll say, you have personal injury protection on your auto insurance, you have health insurance. We're not obligated to pay those bills. But the thing is, Steve, the law says that they are. The law says that the person who caused the collision, we call them the tortfeasor, they're responsible for medical bills. So it's working against your interest, shooting yourself in the foot to take the first offer or even an early offer. And one other reason for that is, I mentioned earlier, I think that injuries don't manifest themselves right away. Sometimes there'll be a trauma force that tears or microfractures a part of your body, and then it's only weeks or months later, after you've been using it in that torn and fractured form, that it starts to get worse and worse. And then by that time, the insurance company is going to say, well, it's been months since your collision, and this is obviously a degenerative long-term injury, and then you won't get anything.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you, Andy, for coming here talking about these five things that you just should not do if you're injured in an auto accident. Again, thank you for being here. It was clear, understandable, make someone even like me understand it, then you did a good job. So thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Steve. Thanks again.
You bet it. And if anyone has any further questions on today's topic, you can post it here. We can get you connected with Andy. And so thank you everyone else for joining us. And until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.